Hello there. So you might have noticed that it's been a little while since I've been around. There's been a number of reasons for that. Around the time that I stopped filming or uploading videos, there was a lot going on in the world, and I didn't want to take attention away from that. Even with my meager following, I was concerned about being tone deaf. So I just kind of stopped uploading anything for a little while. And then, as you can tell by the title of this video, things took a turn for the worst because it's 2020, so why not? So I'm just going to give you a little heads up that this story might be a little long-winded, and I'm just kind of telling it off the top of my head. I'm not reading any kind of script or anything that I probably should have written something. So if I sound really stupid, then that's just because I'm stupid. So here's the story of how little old me, handled breast cancer. And I've had a lot of people asking me what the treatment was like or certain details about it. And it's hard for me to explain in the moment. So now that I can look back on it and think about it, hopefully this will help them better understand what I went through, I guess. It started in the end of May. I was just making dinner, having pierogies or something. I've been sighing a lot. I'm sorry. I went to scratch my boob like you do. You know, if you got boobs, you gotta scratch them sometimes. And I felt a lump in an area that there was not a lump before. And I thought, that's strange, but it's probably nothing. I'm only 33, right? Like, this can't be something serious. So I made a phone appointment with my doctor because everything is under quarantine and I couldn't see her in person. And maybe like a week later was my appointment, and she asked me to basically give myself an examination because she couldn't herself through the phone. Duh. And she asked for, what size it was. I have no concept of size. So I was like, it's smaller than a Timbit. And she's like, what? Like a donut hole if you're American. But it didn't feel huge. I later found out it was like 1.5 centimeters. And there's actually 2 of them. But that's for later. She said, that does sound kind of strange. I'll put a requisition in for you to get a mammogram and an ultrasound. And it all happened really fast. Ask anyone who was there with me. Like, within a couple weeks, I had a mammogram and an ultrasound. And golly gee, the mammogram is not fun. I've never had one before. So it's just, I got big old titties, okay? And it's not fun to have them squished like that and have the machine kind of turn to an angle, like 45-degree angle. So I just felt unhappy. She got the results sent to her within the same day. She called me and she said, there's something that looks a little suspicious, so I'm going to send you for a biopsy. And that happened in June. And again, it happened really fast. I thought the worst thing I would have to deal with would be the biopsy, and that it would hurt. And it did afterwards, not during, because I was numb. And that, I'd just be left with this little stupid scar, and then I'd be done. So the biopsy process is like sticking a fucking knitting needle into a boob. That's the size of the thing that they stick in there. And they had to get 5 or 6 samples. So it was like repeatedly sticking in, and then it would do this weird jolt forward that kind of felt like a punch to the stomach. And that was taking samples. I can't really explain that very well, but that's the best I got. And so I was told I would receive the results within about a week. And I did. I got the results from my family doctor, the same one I had been talking to. She called me, and she very gently told me that it was cancer. It was called a ductal carcinoma, so it's cancer in the milk duct. I found out later it's stage 1, so it's very early. It's not like stage 4 terminal cancer, which was like the only bright side to this whole thing. But it was a lot. I did cry about it, and I had to tell my parents, and I had to tell, my family, the rest of my family members, and it was just, it was very hard to discuss, because I never thought I would have to be in that position. I don't know, I thought if I got cancer, I would get it when I was in my 50s or 60s, not now. Every doctor I met with would be like, oh, you're so young. And I'm like, thanks. Yeah, I know. It made me feel very aware of my own age, because I don't feel old. I feel young. So it's like, why is this happening to me, I had a bunch of things I had to do. It all, again, happened really fast. It was like a big whirlwind. I got a phone call about getting a genetics test to find out if I had some kind of genetic deviation that could, mean in the future I would absolutely get breast cancer again, and that I would have to have a double mastectomy. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about it because of Angelina Jolie. She had a mastectomy because of the BRCA gene malformation. I don't know what it's called. I also had to prepare for surgery to have the lumps removed, to have a lumpectomy. Thankfully not a full mastectomy. They call it either a partial mastectomy or a lumpectomy, but I just call it lumpectomy. It sounds less scary. And keep in mind, I'm going through all of this in the age of COVID, when I can't have anyone with me at the hospital. I've never felt so alone. But I tried to kind of maintain a positive attitude and just kind of deal with it myself. It worked for the most part. There are definitely times when I felt like really sad and lonely, but it was okay. I was scheduled for surgery, and the week before my surgery, I had to have like blood work done, and that's when I also went and did my genetics blood test. So I had 2 different blood tests. Both arms hurt. Not fun. And then they said that would take a couple months to come back, so I shouldn't think about it right now, and that's fine. But when I went to surgery, it was, July 24th. So if you consider the end of May was when I had my phone appointment with my doctor, and July 24th, I am already having surgery. It is very fast. June 26th is when I was told that I had cancer. So about a month later, I'm having surgery. And I went in for my surgery. It was just a day surgery, so I was put under, and then like 5 or 6 hours later, my family picked me up and took me home. But it was an experience. Before the surgery actually started, when I'm like in the hospital getting ready for it, they had to inject my breast with a radioactive isotope to basically turn my lymph nodes blue so that they could detect them and remove a couple for biopsy, because they wanted to make sure the cancer hadn't spread. So the actual feeling of the radioactive isotope being injected, oh my God, it was almost worse than surgery. It was so painful. And the guy warned me ahead of time. He's like, it feels like a burning. And so I'm just letting you know. And the minute he starts injecting me, I'm like, oh my God, you weren't kidding. But it only lasted for a few minutes, and then it was fine. I went and did my surgery, came out of it, and also, the radioactive isotope, funny enough, leaves behind a blue mark. I had a little blue mark right next to my nipple from where they injected, because they injected pretty close to the nipple. It looked like I had just colored my skin with a marker blue for some reason, and it was there for months. Like, it only just recently went away, and it's November. Not only that, it turned my pee blue, which was really fucking weird. I went to the bathroom when I was waking up, and I was still pretty loopy, and I peed, and I was like, why is it blue? I thought I was like high or something. Like, I thought something was wrong with me. And they were like, oh yeah, that's a side effect of the radiation. Like, it's fine. So that was interesting. So I went home. I had to wear a compression thing on my boobs for a couple days. I think I healed okay. Like, it wasn't great. I was left with a scar on my actual breast and then one under my armpit for the lymph nodes, because they said, again, like, they had to take lymph nodes to send a pathology for biopsy. They said it was an invasive cancer, and that means that there's a chance it spread, even just a little bit, so they wanted to make sure. But the scars, the one under my armpit is like an inch, maybe an inch and a half, and then the one on my actual boob, I'd say it's like 3 inches maybe. The worst thing, though, is that I got a very mild infection. It wasn't a really bad infection, obviously, but it was bad enough that it caused the incision to open up. It wasn't pretty, so I had to go to the doctor and I had to get antibiotics, and it was very frustrating having this like kind of gaping open wound when it was supposed to be healing, and it made the scar look kind of like jagged and gross and big, and yeah, not as neat as I would have liked, but whatever. So I found out later that I would obviously need radiation, and they said that there was a chance I would need chemo. They would send the actual like tumors off to get biopsied to find out if I needed chemo to prevent, as a preventative measure for the future, because they did the same kind of genetics test on the actual tumors. And that was a little scary. I also didn't know that there was a difference between a radiation oncologist and a medical oncologist, I think they're called, because I had 2 different oncologists for 2 different reasons. So one was for chemo and one was for radiation. But I thankfully didn't end up having to have chemo. But radiation is unavoidable, and that is strictly, it's a preventative measure, because even if my genes come back and say that I'm not going to get breast cancer in the future, there's still a chance that it could happen, that it could come back. So, yeah, I think they said my chances after getting my genetics test and everything, my chances are less than 25%. So that's good. I was expecting so much worse. Because, this whole time when I first found the lump, I thought, oh, it's probably just like a cyst or something, or like a ball of fat. Like, who knows what that is? I'm not going to think like worst case scenario. Then it turns out to be cancer. So I'm like, well, maybe I'm just really unlucky, because that is a pretty bad scenario. So I just kind of expected the worst for everything, but my genetics test came back fine. I don't have any kind of fucked up genes, which is nice. And so I had to start radiation. And let me tell you, there are a lot of things that I didn't know had to be done when you're dealing with breast cancer and radiation and stuff, because I just thought, yeah, I'll get radiation and then I'll be fine. But I had to change every medication I was on, because I've been on medications for years, and I had to switch to a new medication because the one I had interacted with the tamoxifen that they were going to put me on for endocrine therapy or whatever. I also had an IUD, and I only got it in 2019. I've had one before for 5 years, and then you take it out. But if you've ever had an IUD, you know that you have to get a new one after that amount of time. But I had to get it removed because again it would interact with medications, and also my type of cancer was found to be like, I think they called it estrogen receptive or something. So like the hormones in my body would make it worse. I'm not a doctor, can you tell? So I had to take out my IUD, which is like the worst thing in the world for me, because I really liked having that. And I had to go on tamoxifen and change my antidepressants. It was just a whole big thing. So for a couple weeks, I was really not fun to be around, because my hormones and my emotions were all over the place, and I couldn't help it. But I started radiation September 18th, I believe, and that is something that I had to do Monday to Friday, every single day, for about half an hour-ish. And then, I'd have the weekends off for 20 sessions. So it took about a month to complete. And a lot of people have asked, what is radiation exactly? Does it hurt? Is it similar to chemo? Like, it's not. There are lots of side effects, obviously, and it's different for everybody, so don't take my word for it. But basically, when I first go in, there's this thing in the middle of the room. It looks like a huge torture device with a bed on it. And the bed is not a bed. It's just a table, but they call it a bed. But it's very flat and not comfortable. And I have to lie on it with the blanket underneath me and put my arms above my head and just have my titties out, as you do. And they had about a week beforehand given me tattoos to mark the area where the lasers have to point, and they're just like 5 or 6 dots that are blue, and they're in random spots on my body, just like here. So when I actually start the radiation, they know how to position me to make sure that they're hitting the right spot. They would do things like I need hips, and then they would like grab the blanket underneath me and kind of adjust it a little bit by pulling on it so my hips move but the rest of me doesn't move. It was very, very alarming because I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I got used to it. And it feels kind of like just getting an x-ray. Like, it doesn't hurt, it's just there. It's noisy, and the machine has lasers. That's about it. But the downside is I had to hold my breath for the first 15 treatments. And I'm not very good at that. I have asthma, and I've always had shitty breath control, but I tried. And it's because the cancer, because it's on my breast, is so close to like my heart and my lungs, and they wanted to make sure that they would not hit that with radiation, because then that would cause severe issues for me later in life. So every time it was like me lying there with my titties out, and then they'd be like, okay, and deep breath in, keep going, and hold. And then I would hear the noise of the machine going on, and I would have to hold my breath maybe 30 seconds ish. The last one was always the longest. Every day that I was there, it was the last image they had to do for the longest time. I have no idea why. So my breath would be held for, a while. And the entire time I'm just lying there thinking, oh my God, please stop. And there are times I would leave with a headache just from holding my breath, because I'm not good at that. And all things considered, it's not that bad of a thing, and I sound like I'm complaining about nothing, but it was very annoying. And they told me that the side effects take a while to kind of take hold, obviously, because the radiation is in your system and it kind of builds up over time. So within the first 2 weeks, I felt fine, but after that, I felt really tired and exhausted to the bone, and it would get really red and painful, and it kind of looked like a sunburn. My skin would start peeling. My incision underneath my armpit actually started opening up again, so they had to give me a cream called Flamazine, which did help, but it wasn't a miracle cure or anything. It was just kind of like a Band-Aid. When all was said and done, they said, at my last session, they were like, okay, so you're going to still feel the side effects for the next 2 weeks, and they're probably going to get worse, but after that, you should be okay. And they were right. The side effects did feel really bad for a little while after radiation was done. But I was just glad to not have to go to the hospital every single day. I met with my oncologist after, and he he told me that because of the radiation, there's a chance that my one boob will just have a tan for the rest of my life. And the other one won't. And I'm, you know, if you know me, I'm pretty pale. So it looks different. Like one boob is darker than the other. There were times during radiation when it got really painful and like sore. My nipple was, I'm sorry, I'm talking about my nipple. I mean, you should have expected this, but it was like, I couldn't even touch it with a t-shirt that I was wearing. You know, if my nipple brushed against my t-shirt, it was so painful. It was like swollen and red and like angry looking. It's changed even just since surgery, not only radiation, but since surgery in general. My left nipple, because it's on my left side, I should have clarified. My left nipple, it feels like flatter than my right. Like it's kind of concave, but not really. Because it's not, but it feels flat. Like there's like something missing from behind it to keep it from like actually being fully formed. Which I guess would make sense. They removed a lot of stuff from me. And my nipple is now more dark than the other one. And it's a good time. And he said that, he asked, you know, are you feeling any pain? And I told him honestly, like, it only hurts like if I poke at it or like push on it. And he's like, oh, well, that might not go away. So I might just never be able to touch this boob again, which is really sad. My poor lefty. But, you know, I'm alive and I didn't have to have a mastectomy, that was what scared me the most, because I like my boobs. I was terrified of losing them, and I'm sure that a lot of other people can relate if they've found out that they've had to have that. It's a big deal, you know? I'm grateful for all the doctors who have helped, and I'm grateful for my family for being there for me and driving me to radiation all the time and dealing with my exhaustion and my mood swings and just everything. It was a lot. Side note, I have never in my life shown my breasts to so many people as I have in the past couple months. Like, holy shit. So many different people and doctors and radiation workers, everything. Everybody got to see the goods. And it made me feel a little more confident in myself, because I'm like, you know what? They see boobs every day. It's okay. But I'm very shy as a person, like in general. I don't want people to see my boobs. But, you know, everybody did. And I made jokes about, you know, I should start charging. Ha ha ha. Whatever. So that's the end of the story, I guess. For the time being, I'm free of cancer, which is great. I don't have anything to worry about in the future except potentially getting cancer again. But, you know, there's no 100% certainty, so that's okay. I do have to get a mammogram every year for the rest of my life, which, you know, so much fun. Really looking forward to that. And now I'm just kind of left with these gnarly scars and a tan boob. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching this video and for going along with me on my journey through breast cancer. I really appreciate it. Hopefully this helped kind of ease your mind a little bit. If you haven't found back any results or anything, or maybe you're worried about something that you haven't even talked to a doctor yet. Just, you know, it's always good to check yourself, and it's always good to talk to your doctor about things, because you never know. You think you're being paranoid, but you could end up finding cancer. So if you are in a situation where you've already been told you have cancer, and like maybe you watched this because you were interested to find out my perspective or, you know, what I went through, thank you. I hope you go through radiation or whatever you're going through. I hope you go through it well and healthy, and you come out on the other side like smiling, because that's important. I'm really bad at outros. I just want everyone to know that I love you all, and thank you. This was very long. I apologize, but it means a lot to me that you watched it. If you did, If you didn't, you're not going to hear this, so who cares? I love you, and thank you for watching. Farewell.